fitness is an amazing place to start. And ultimately, there is a gap between the medical profession and fitness. And I think that if we can bridge the gap, then we're going to see great movement forward in terms of the longevity of individuals.
So you have a passion for fitness and the desire to start your own business. But launching a massively successful fitness business is extremely complex. The systems, operations, hiring, firing, coaching, sales, and marketing are critical to success. Where do you even start? This show will give you the answers. Here is Bedros Keuilian and Bryce Henson, your hosts of the Fitness Franchise Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms.
Welcome back, my friend, to another incredible episode of the Fitness Franchise Podcast. And before I tee up today's guest, I want to give you a friendly reminder to give us a like and subscribe on YouTube and write us an awesome review on iTunes. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. So now to tee up today's guest, who's a dear friend of mine who's also a doctor of osteopathic medicine. She's been featured on Muscle and Fitness, both women's and men's health, along with featured on big time podcasts with millions of downloads. And today you're going to learn the value of muscle-centric medicine and focusing on your metabolism. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. We've been planning this for a while now, make it all the way from the East Coast, and got a lot of good stuff to talk about. But first and foremost, I want to tell the audience, give them a little insight to who you are. So if you'd be so kind, share the backstory.
Yeah, of course. Well, obviously my name is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and I'm a physician, and I practice a kind of medicine called muscle-centric medicine.
And we're going to talk about that today.
I cannot wait. And I have been very fortunate in terms of the trajectory of my career and my learning. So I did my undergraduate at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign in vitamin mineral metabolism.
Well, first and foremost, by the way, I'm a Michigan State grad, so the Go Big Ten, which is awesome. But back to, I guess, the education behind it. And I believe you're a DO?
I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. But specifically for undergrad perspective, that was vitamin and mineral?
It was vitamin mineral metabolism.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough to land in Dr. Donald Lehman's lab.
Okay.
And he is one of the premier world researchers leading protein metabolism.
So kind of back this stuff up. I mean, obviously we know each other. You're a brilliant mind. Like, how did you really realize this is what you wanted to go into?
From the very beginning, at 17 actually, I graduated high school early and I moved to Hawaii. Rough place, I know, Kauai, and I moved in with my godmother, Liz Lipsky.
Okay.
She is a PhD in nutrition, and that really just changed the whole trajectory of my life.
And this is right after you graduated high school.
Yeah.
And then how long did you stay there before you went to Illinois?
I stayed there for a year.
Okay.
And then I went to the University of Illinois.
Okay.
And I was just lucky enough, again, to land in Lehman's lab. And that was so fortunate because it really changed my perspective of nutrition.
And how so?
Because I realized that protein and muscle were incredibly important.
Okay.
And I just became fascinated with it. I mean, it's kind of like nerdy to even think about that, but just very interested in that particular subject.
Okay, cool. What was your we're going to talk about muscle-centric, the focus, but aside, like, if you could kind of take a step back, what was your biggest probably takeaway from that experience? Was it that, or?
It was interesting. I ended up going to medical school because there was a tornado warning, and we were in nutrition class. So I started out as a nutrition major. We were in nutrition class, and we all had to go into this fallout area. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm completely useless right now. What can I do? Here, have an apple. Mm-hmm. And it was at that moment I really decided that I wanted to be a physician, because I wanted to really be able to be of service if there was an emergency.
That's awesome. And you are a giver, and I love how passionate you are about just your space and the amount of education and knowledge you have.
Yeah.
So it's a testament to you and certainly your passion to help others. So kind of walking through that, and then I guess that was your kind of aha, this is what you want to do.
Yep.
Walk us through then, I guess you went to school in Arizona?
Then I went to medical school in Arizona, and I really didn't like it. I didn't know if I was going to finish. I found it really tough in terms of conceptually. It was very sickness-based, which that was expected, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. And I do think that that's a difficult pill to swallow if that's not your focus. I was very interested in health. I was very interested in nutrition. But, in order to build a foundation, you do have to go through sacrifice. You do have to put in the work. And I put in the work, but I just didn't know if I was going to complete it because it just was so misaligned.
Interesting.
With me, yeah.
But you did, though.
I did.
What was that like? Is that 4 years of undergrad and then
medical school,
which is another 4 years?
Yeah, another 4 years. And then I did 2 years of psychiatry at University of Louisville.
Interesting.
And I decided that was really not for me. I was very interested in the mind-body connection. I was very interested in mental health at the time.
Okay.
I had great training. It was phenomenal training. And it really equipped me to deal with, which we'll talk about, really the internal logistics of a human. Because being a good physician isn't just about being able to diagnose illness. It's really about being able to see patterns of people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does,
yeah.
Right? So I spent 2 years at the University of Louisville. Then I did a family medicine residency at North Shore LIJ. And then
Where's that?
It's in Long Island.
Okay.
And then I did a fellowship at WashU in St. Louis for 2 years.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
You moved around.
I did. And that was in nutritional sciences, obesity medicine, and geriatrics.
Okay, well, interestingly enough, and one of the big things that, myself and our organization is really trying to combat the obesity pandemic, but we talked out on this offline, and I would love your insight specifically on that.
I think that we have it wrong. I don't think that we have an obesity epidemic. I think we have a under-muscled issue. We are not over-fat, we are under-muscled. And with this idea of obesity, is obesity a problem? Yes, but it is a symptomology of a much greater problem, which is issues with skeletal muscle. Obesity starts in skeletal muscle. Insulin resistance starts in skeletal muscle. Yet we are constantly trying to address body fat as if that's the focal point. But it's not.
That's the symptom.
It's the symptom. Muscle is the pinnacle. If you really want to combat obesity, then you have to focus on skeletal muscle. We have a branch of medicine, obesity medicine. Why do we not have a branch of medicine that is muscle-centric?
Well, what even that look like? I don't even know.
It looks like optimization of skeletal muscle. It looks like optimization of body composition. It looks like good blood sugar regulation, proper hormone management, proper nutrition, training. Muscle is the organ of longevity. And that's what it looks like. That's what we need to address. People are so interested in immunity nowadays. Then you have to care about skeletal muscle.
Well, let's dive into that, especially since our audience are interested in fitness and business, and a lot of our audience has probably had an experience with fitness. Maybe like me, for example. I wasn't a fit guy, grew up in the Midwest like you. Great place, lovely people, not the fitness capital of the world.
No.
So I came to California, and thankfully a good buddy of mine kind of put me under his wing and actually transformed my body, dropped about 20 pounds of body fat, put on muscle, which strength training is a big component of that. And that's my story, and there's a lot of, of our audience have gone through that transition, and they're like, okay, I'm called for something greater. I want to be a health coach. I really want to make an impact in my community, but there's a gap, okay, from an education perspective and a practical application. So, from your perspective, what would be some starting points for our audience to kind of learn? And we'll go probably nutrition, but first with muscle.
First, I want to say that fitness is an amazing place to start. And ultimately, there is a gap between the medical profession and fitness. And I think that if we can bridge the gap, then we're going to see great movement forward in terms of the longevity of individuals.
In what way? How would you bridge that?
Okay, so fitness right now, when we think about skeletal muscle, is really external. It is about locomotion, and it's about performance, and it's about strength. That is incredibly valuable, but that is only one aspect of the importance of skeletal muscle.
Okay.
It is an endocrine organ, which means when you contract it, it secretes myokines. People are like, what are myokines? Myokines are proteins that go through the body and have incredible impact on the bone and the brain and the liver.
In a positive way?
In a positive way, mostly in a positive way. Skeletal muscle secretes things like interleukin-6, which go and create an anti-inflammatory effect in the body. Contracting skeletal muscle produces glutamine, which feeds cells of the immune system. So my point is, while fitness is really so important, and we have to do that right, if we can broaden the conversation that fitness is the gateway to overall health and wellness above and beyond looking good and being fit, but it truly is medicine, and it truly is about skeletal muscle as an organ system.
Interesting. So let's continue to dive in that.
So if people understand that, then they can understand that they're not just, it's so much more than training to be fit. If an individual really wants to inspire their clients, they have to understand that, fitness drives some people, but being around to play with your kids, being able to not lose your memory, being able to protect yourself from heart attack, that is really impactful.
Yeah, like live life to the fullest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe, that's about muscle.
So what are some strategies to go combat that? And I guess take a step back, being in the fitness space for a while, and obviously we work out, we take care of ourselves, and we help other people do the same. For our fitness program at FitBody, there's 3 modalities that we have, and actually one is strength training, so resistance training.
You guys nailed that one.
Working on the muscle. The other is metabolic conditioning or cardio training, and then the other actually is just we call it classic workout, which is a blend of both. But in every workout, there's always strength, there's always metabolic conditioning, and then there's a blend of both equally. But our strength days, there's a little bit more focus on strength. Our metabolic conditioning, a little bit more focus on that. So aside from lifting weights and resistance, which is so important, and a lot of our clients, Dr. Gabrielle, are women, and they're probably in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s.
Amazing.
But one of the biggest, concerns that, Mrs. Jones, is our dream client or avatar, comes and says, Bryce, or, coach, whatever, I'm just scared that if I lift weights, I'm going to get big and bulky like the Hulk.
Everybody says
Everyone thinks that. So what's the response there?
You know how hard that is?
Yeah, totally.
That is a total misconception. It takes a lot of effort to put on muscle, and especially with your target audience, the older a woman gets, the more difficult it is to put on muscle. And that's not across the board, but hormones decline, especially during menopause. If that transition, perimenopause, then that is their time for losing muscle mass quickly.
So that creates a more challenging environment for
metabolism. For glucose regulation, for the diseases of aging, which is very interesting. When we think of the diseases of aging, we think about diabetes, insulin resistance, hypertension, cardiovascular disease. These, Alzheimer's even, these diseases start early, 30s.
Really?
Yeah, but we just don't realize it's very insidious.
So how do we combat that? And I guess my first thought is, okay, if muscle-centric needs to be the focus, resistance training, strength training, that's a very critical component.
But I love that you're adding in cardiovascular training for mitochondrial function. It's very important, right?
So unpack that. What's the value there?
Well, it's interesting, and I was doing another podcast last week, and the individual was saying, well, I don't believe in doing cardiovascular activity. And, in my mind, it's kind of, we're always at extremes.
That's human nature.
And we don't have to be.
That is human nature. It's extremes.
There's this way in which the human body was designed, and cardiovascular activity is important for mitochondrial function, which obviously is the powerhouse of the cell. It's really important for cardiovascular health. We know these things. Is it going to do much for muscular strength? Probably not. And that's why you add in resistance exercise, which stimulates the muscle. I think more and more women are utilizing resistance training, especially when we're thinking about aging. We've all seen our older parents or grandparents get really skinny.
Totally.
Sarcopenic. You have to prevent that. I mean, there is an inevitable decline with muscle. It just happens.
Right.
Unfortunately, it happens. You have to do your best to be able to combat that. And certainly training and then nutrition.
Yeah, so let's dive there. Because my first thought is, okay, fitness, strength training, resistance training, but it's more than that. And
that is incredibly valuable, and people are not going to be able to protect themselves if they are not doing that.
Sure. But when I think of, okay, that's a focus of strength training and putting on lean muscle mass.
Yeah.
But when I think of nutrition, my first mind goes to body composition change. Like, you're going to feel better, you're going to be healthier.
Yep.
But how does the nutritional aspect kind of tie into that muscle-centric focus?
Well, that is really about prioritizing protein.
Okay.
And high quality protein. And when I think about high quality protein, I think about beef and chicken and bison, fish, whey protein, eggs. That's high quality protein. And there's a lot of misconception out there in terms of plant and animal protein. And when you're younger, it doesn't really matter. You can really get away with lower quality protein. And quality protein is really based on the amino acid content.
Okay.
And everyone knows amino acids are the building blocks.
Of the muscle, yeah.
Right? And when you eat a dietary protein, it has multiple amino acids. That's to say that high quality protein has the essential amino acids, which is really the amino acids that your body cannot make, that you must get from food.
Oh, and externally.
Right, exactly.
But why, and kind of unpacking the box,
Yeah.
why when you're younger you can kind of get away with it, I think you're alluding to, then when you're older you necessarily can't.
You have a lot of hormones when you're younger. You are in a growth phase. And as you age, obviously, you're not growing taller. If you're growing, you might be growing wider, which is a negative. And it becomes more important as you shift from that high hormone state to then a more focused nutritional plan to be able to support muscle.
Meaning, like, okay, when you're younger, you're at a high hormonal state, but then as...
Listen, you could eat... When you were in high school, what were you eating?
Like,
Twinkies.
Taco Bell was a staple of my diet.
I saw
Embarrassingly
Taco
to
Bell
say.
on my way here, and I thought of you. But you could and you saw those guys, they could eat whatever they want, and
totally.
you're like, how are you so ripped? You just ate a pack of Twinkies.
Totally.
Because they're young, they're growing, their bodies are very anabolic. And I know that I'm simplifying this in a way, but I think conceptually everybody's had the experience where when they are young, they can eat whatever they want. And when they're in their 20s, and then all of a sudden they go to college and they're still able to be a bit reckless. But as you age and then you're reaching 30, things start to change. And really that decade from 30 to 40, you have to set the foundation for good nutritional habits. And this is really based on high quality protein, in my opinion. And the way to do that is to choose, nutrient dense foods, like what we had talked about earlier. And a great take home message would be when you are young, you actually can get the same anabolic response to the muscle with less protein per meal. So when you were in high school, we could give you, 15, 20 grams of protein, and you would still have a anabolic response. As an individual ages, that efficiency goes down.
Interesting.
To the muscle.
Yeah.
So for all your health coaches and for the people that are really interested in health and wellness, dosing dietary protein is incredibly important.
And how do you do that?
30 to 50 grams, and I know I say it a million times, but 30 to 50 grams per meal is ideal. And in the literature, people can argue, well, it's really about the 24-hour protein intake. I can appreciate that, and the literature supports that in the young.
What do you mean the 24-hour protein intake?
So, for example, how much protein are you eating in a 24-hour period?
Oh, got it, yep.
Right? If you're 200 pounds and you're eating 200 grams of protein, that's adequate.
Which is kind of like the benchmark, right?
Right.
Like 185 pounds, so I should probably be eating 185 grams.
But now let's take someone like my dad.
Okay.
And my dad is 70. And if he were to eat, if he's 170 pounds and he were to eat 170 grams of protein one time a day, or even twice, that may not be as beneficial for him.
You mean like all at once?
Yeah.
Okay.
How's he gonna do that?
I don't no idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that if you spread out the protein, you can have a more frequent opportunity to stimulate that tissue. And then over the long term, through aging, that's better. So we have to be very careful about what target we're talking about. If we are talking about longevity, longevity is about protecting muscle.
Love it. So hypothetical situation, you're
love
at,
those.
you're at it, well, and you've experienced many of these, right? But you're coaching a client who comes to you. She's in her mid 40s. She's Dr. Gabrielle. I've tried everything, this, that, and the other, but I don't feel that well. I'm just not vibrant like I used to be. I have 50 pounds to lose. What sort of recommendations, are you making in terms of a nutrition protocol?
Well, there are 2 recommendations, and I'm going to talk to you about the nutrition protocol first, and then I'm going to talk to you about the internal protocol second.
Okay.
The nutrition protocol, 1, she has to track her calories. Calories in, calories out matter. No matter what you're hearing, it matters.
Yeah, like law of thermodynamics, and
it matters.
Basic, yeah.
There may be aspects we don't know. For example, the microbiome effect. There are things that we perhaps don't understand, but at the end of the day, calories matter. So number 1, she has to track. Number 2, she has to, once we identify how much she's eating, we then would implement how much protein are you eating and how are you doing it. And then, of course, making sure she's not drinking too much and getting in extra calories there and getting proper sleep. So all of those things would be important to look at.
What about carbohydrates and fats, which comes up as well, right?
All of it.
Yeah.
As an individual gets older, and that perhaps if she's not training as hard as she should, she really has to earn her carbohydrates. So for her, I would recommend 40 grams of carbohydrates or less per meal. The reason is it helps mitigate an insulin response, too robust of an insulin response. And again, it matters more about calories, but if her blood sugar is going up and down because she's having a big bolus of carbohydrates, it's not going to be her best strategy to lose weight.
Walk me through the insulin spikes and all that. I know it's really terrible, right? And that's why you want to eat, every few hours to kind of keep the insulin regulated. But what's the adverse effect?
Well, because then there can be a subsequent drop in blood sugar, and then you're hungry, and then you're tired, and then you're more likely to go and eat something perhaps that isn't on your plan. We've all been there.
Oh, totally.
Oh my God, where's those gummy bears, right? That is not a good long-term strategy.
Totally.
But if you can regulate your ebbs and flows of insulin and you can keep blood sugar stable, and arguably the best way to do that is dietary protein, because your body can generate its own glucose.
When you say dietary protein, do you mean protein source from, protein shakes, or are you talking about animal protein?
It can be anything.
Okay.
But the body can actually generate carbohydrates from dietary protein. And so instead of actually having to eat it and getting these huge ebbs and flows of carbohydrate or ebbs and flows of insulin and blood sugar, then your body can actually generate it.
Meaning
through something called gluconeogenesis.
Okay, whew, Dr. Gabrielle.
You're asking these questions.
They're very true.
So basically what an individual needs to know is that carbohydrates, there's nothing bad about them, but they do need to be managed. And ideally, if you are someone who is not super active, managing them at a meal, at a per meal basis is important because it helps regulate blood sugar. Carbohydrates above and beyond, say 40 grams of carbohydrates per meal, they have to earn.
They have to earn.
They have to earn it.
Yeah.
Right? So after a Fit Body Boot Camp, if we're talking about muscle glycogen recovery, then of course they can have some carbohydrates at that time.
Totally.
A great strategy would be to balance dietary protein per meal. What that means is 30 to 50 grams when they're eating, depending, right? And this is a very broad generalization, but a great takeaway for people to go and say, okay, I can do this. And that becomes really important because protein helps with satiation.
Totally. Interesting. I want to play, not devil's advocate, but for me, I love protein, so there's no issue. But, being in the field, and granted, it's been a few years since I've been at the gym and training clients on an individual basis, but a lot of the feedback actually receiving it, it's Dr. Gabrielle, or Coach Bryce, it's hard to eat this much protein.
Yeah.
What's the response and I guess strategy and coaching there?
Yeah. Well, number one, if you're not eating it, so yes, it's true because it keeps people full. And you can slowly increase it. But if they're not eating, what are they eating?
Garbage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it's really interesting. People have a hard time following a nutrition plan. And of course, that's the internal logistical part, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
But the question is is how hungry is an individual. And you know how you can tell how hungry an individual is?
How?
You offer them the plain chicken breast, and you're like, okay, are you really hungry?
You're not that hungry.
No, you're not that hungry. So anyway, that is...
That's the litmus test.
That's exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So let's get back to this woman who is in her 40s and she can't lose weight.
Yeah.
The next question you have to ask is the internal framework for her capacity to reach her level of fitness or wellness. And I have been seeing patients for 15 years. And over that period of time, I've learned some very interesting things about individuals.
Okay.
And there's a few things that I would love to share.
Please.
The first thing is there is a self-worth barometer.
I agree. I'm curious on where you're going with it, but 100%.
If this individual, what should we name her? Nancy,
Mrs.
Sarah?
Jones.
Mrs. Jones, okay, Mrs. Jones. If Mrs. Jones doesn't believe she is worthy of being fit and being healthy, she will always sabotage herself. The fitter she gets, the better she gets, the closer to feeling good, there's a ceiling of wellness that she will predictably fall back. And I see this, it's typically in a cycle of, and everyone will have their cycle. If you can bring conscious awareness to it, they'll be able to plan for their weakness and really overcome that. Some individuals, they'll be great for 6 weeks, and then they'll start to lose weight. And then all of a sudden, they don't feel worthy
They hit a ceiling,
of feeling good.
and they start sabotaging.
Totally. But it's predictable.
Is that where your, I guess, psychology,
Yeah.
framework actually
Of
has
course.
helped you in medicine coaching?
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter if you give someone a plan. If they are not aware of their weaknesses, they will never reach extraordinary health.
Agreed.
Individuals and coaches should not ask about clients' strengths because we don't really care.
Weaknesses.
You gotta leverage their weaknesses.
And how do you do that? Because, and depending on the relationship, I would imagine, but you have some clients who are going to be open book, and you have some clients that's a tough, vulnerable situation to go through.
But it's necessary. And the faster that they can go into the eye of the storm, the faster they'll get through.
And how would you say, is it relationship building? Is it like, how do you, what's your strategy? How do you connect with your clients in that way?
Well, ultimately the question becomes, if there's a behavior in place that is really sabotaging that individual, we have to understand that how long are they going to allow that to go on? So for example, for Mrs. Jones who comes at home from a predictably difficult day and goes into the cabinet and is eating cookies, or she's having her third glass of wine. She knows that that's going to happen. And that is very predictable.
Well, I love how the predictably element, like in the subconscious, she knows this?
Totally.
Okay.
And every night she says she isn't going to do it.
Do it again.
Her present self is so disconnected to her future self. And if you can bring Mrs. Jones into the present to allow her to recognize that the habits that the actions that she takes that day will likely be the action she takes tomorrow. If she takes that action, you have to ask her, okay, are you willing to do this for the next month?
People kid themselves. It's crazy because people think like, okay, tomorrow it's going to be different.
Right. And then what happens is you have a lifetime of regret. And you can only leverage that behavior for so long, and it becomes incredibly destructive.
In what ways does it show up?
It shows up in obesity and blood sugar and cognitive problems. How you operate in one domain is how you're going to operate in the other domains.
B has this quote, how you do anything is how you do everything, and you've said it in a different kind of, more of a medical, perspective, but so true.
Yeah. So really, once an individual is aware of their weaknesses, they can plan for that, and understanding who you want to be in the future and bringing that to the forefront and asking that individual, is the action that you are doing at this moment going to bring you to where you want to be? Most habits and most behaviors are not surprising.
They're predictable.
They're predictable. Yet people are surprised by their own humanness.
like so many takeaways here. Like that is so, I've never actually looked at it in this granularity, but that is so true. Like people are always surprised at their humanness.
Right. And if you plan for that, then you can really change the trajectory of an individual's life.
And how do you plan for that?
You think about what is the action. For example, if an individual knows that they really need to quit drinking.
Which I did 5 years ago.
Okay, congratulations.
And thank you.
How
and
did you do that?
I only said, well, I had a low point in my life.
Okay.
And actually, when I went into a coaching program, very famous, but from the anonymity perspective, I'll leave that out. I'm what's called a high bottom drunk, meaning like the world I didn't lose anything major. I didn't lose my job or this, that, and the other. I didn't go to jail. But ultimately the internal pain in a relationship with my family, my sister, like fractured, and I realized I was not being a good leader. I was not leading with moral authority, and just an incredible amount of like emotional pain hit a point. And actually, to your point, I woke up one day, and number one, I realized I was an ineffective leader for my family, for my sister, for my siblings. And number two, I realized, like, this is insanity. Like, I've been kidding myself that this is gonna stop, but clearly it's not. Like, I finally hit a point where it's like, it's very clear to me this is gonna happen over and over and over again. And for me, the insanity of alcoholism, because I'm a recovering alcoholic, I have other family members that are alcoholics. My father was an alcoholic, my grandfather, probably his grandfather too. And I had this aha moment, like this low bottom drunk moment, if you will, that for me, the pain got too great, and I realized that this is just gonna keep on happening again unless I make a stand.
Right.
So sorry to hijack that, but I think to that point.
So what you did is you merged and recognized your future self, and you brought that to the present. And that's what people cannot do.
Interesting. Yeah, I never thought of it like that, but I did.
And if you don't do that, it's called present bias. If you don't do that, the likelihood of success is very small, because people cannot grasp what you grasp. And you have to, teach people.
And, for me, I don't want to get on my high horse and say it was just like all of a sudden it took a little while.
That is a lot of pain. When you get to that point, that is a moment where you cannot turn back from, and you had to make a choice.
Because realistically, I look back at, I was 33 at the time, and I think I realized the first time, which I was blown away, because I always thought an alcoholic was someone who didn't have a job, that was homeless, that living under a bridge and drinking. No, I mean, it's very high functioning. Ultimately, I was what we would call a binge drinker, if you will. But I realized, I think I woke up when I was 26 years old and realized, holy smokes, I actually might be the A word. And it wasn't until, that would be 7 years later, before I actually made a full change.
Yeah, well, you're lucky that you were able to do that. And luck really isn't a component of it, but there was a bit of foresight. And maybe you
a little bit of both, probably.
Yeah. And that becomes really important. So for individuals, it's not just about what they need to do. The what they need to do in terms of nutrition and training, that's out there. And you guys have developed a great program. But the other thing is, it's that how to do it, how to understand, how to deal with the self-worth, how to deal with that internal narrative.
Because that's really all the internal concept that you talk about.
If that is not in place, then nothing is going to fall into place.
So what are some other strategies to work on the internal component? And also too, like, I'm looking at it from the lens of, you're an incredible coach and our audience want to be incredible coaches. So what are some other strategies or takeaways that you can provide?
Bringing conscious awareness to the things that are really dark for people, because it's typically not that dark. Again, I've been seeing patients for a very long time, and they all have a narrative. Whether the narrative is, oh my God, I'm so fat, or oh my God, like I'm worthless, I'm such an idiot, I don't know, I'm never gonna make it. Whatever it is, everybody has their own flavor of narratives. And they have no idea that it's running in the background all day long. So the first thing, and I learned this actually from my coach, I have coached with the Handel group for a very long time, we just started writing it down. When you catch it.
Like writing your own narrative.
Oh my God. By the end of the day, there's like 200 mean statements that you've said to yourself, and then you'll pick out 4 or 5 different themes.
The constant themes that keep showing up.
But what those themes do is they actually run your life, not your life. I'll give you an example. When, before I had kids, I would exercise for, 3-4 hours a day. 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night.
Well, you look amazing. Is that the result of the reason behind that?
No, that's insanity, right? That's insanity.
Totally.
It was, instead of it was like, oh, I love this, it was, I have to be fitter. I'm not fit enough. I have to do this. But it was this narrative that I wasn't even aware of, right? And that's just one example. But that was taking away time from writing my book. That was taking away time from reading about other things that I needed to be reading about. It was a way in which I was distracting myself from doing things I needed to do. So it was this negative narrative. And again, everybody has it. It's part of, actually, I shouldn't say everybody. My husband says that he doesn't have it, which I believe. He said that they trained that out of him in buds, that you don't actually survive if you have a narrative.
You think that's true?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I've actually never seen another human like that. And maybe a couple of his other buddies, but yeah, most people have a narrative.
Yeah, totally.
And you have to become aware of it.
In what way? Like journaling? I guess
just write it down. Yeah. I mean, you should send me a message tomorrow. I bet you're like, oh my God, I never thought about that.
I will.
Because they exist. They exist. Once you recognize that there are narratives, then you have the ability to change them. So going back to Mrs. Jones with the self-worth, I'm sure there's a reason underneath there. There's always a reason why people are not making gains, and it's very rarely because they are executing the plan appropriately. But the question is, why?
Why?
Yeah. And so then you solve for the why, and you give them the what to do, and then you have extraordinary help.
Love it. What else?
Those are those are really the big things. And I would say, being adaptable, teaching people that they can be adaptable. You either find an excuse or you find a way. If you're traveling and you need to stay on a nutrition plan, it's not rocket science. You either want to do it or you don't. And that's really important. So really planning for consistency.
Love it.
Yeah.
I know you're an expert at this, and it's something kind of cliche, if you will, but you talked a little bit about menopause and hormonal changes. Can you talk a little bit about, hormones and as it pertains to, clients and the results, Mrs. Jones as an example? And we don't need to spend a ton of time, but I would love to pick your brain.
I think that obviously hormones are important, and I do think that there is a place for hormone replacement therapy if someone is a candidate. And, I don't know, I would say a decade ago it was very controversial and nobody was doing it, but I think that that's becoming more the standard of care.
Yeah.
With these whole concept of, and I hate the word anti-aging because we all age, and aging truly is a privilege, but being able to understand.
Aging is a privilege.
It is.
I love that.
You know how many guys, my husband is a SEAL, and how many guys don't actually get to age?
Well, that's a very, very true and real statement for you. I haven't shared this yet, but I just found out this past week, my cousin who's 45 passed away last weekend, and just way too young, too young. So to your point, it is a privilege.
It's a privilege.
Yeah.
And, we have this concept that we should all be anti-aging, and no, I don't think that that's the right way to think about longevity. And back to Mrs. Jones, what's important is, understanding where she's at, getting her blood before, being very aware, uncovering the internal as it relates to blood levels of hormones, things of that nature, thyroid, which all of that stuff changes as we age, right? That's the natural progression. And being quick to implement, if an individual is a candidate, therapy. And it's not something that anyone should be ashamed of. Or, some of the guys, it's interesting, some guys are like, oh, I don't want to go on testosterone. I'll never have to come, I'll never be able to come off of it. Well, you could come off of it and your levels will probably go down. So it's totally an individual choice. But, and then the one thing that individuals can do to naturally optimize hormones or, take better care of yourself. Stay lean, not too lean, get sleep. Do the obvious.
Eat your protein.
I don't know if that directly impacts hormones, but yes. Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
God, this has been very insightful and very, very, I guess, relevant to our audience, who this is just, their day-to-day, I guess, in their future careers of, owning a fitness business is just so important because, these are common things that come up from a client perspective that, one, fitness professionals need to understand, and then two, they need to be able to provide better coaching to their clients.
Yeah.
So.
And by understanding that it's not just the nutrition training and medicine, and I'm sure everybody knows that, but really in order to be a good coach or a good physician, it is about caring for the person and really seeing where they're at and seeing where they really need to improve.
Yeah.
This idea of being soft with people is, I really think, is a disservice. And it doesn't mean being a jerk.
Meaning, though, just giving coaching, giving direct feedback, giving them the advice and the coaching
they deserve
need.
that.
Yeah, they deserve that.
Instead of, oh no, it's okay. I know that you ate that cookie last night and it's your 7th night of eating your cookie.
Yeah.
It's okay. No, it's not okay.
It's not okay.
It's not okay.
Yeah.
And it's not to make you feel bad, but you do need to be accountable.
It's trying to help you.
You need to be accountable.
Yeah.
I think that it becomes impactful if we are a little harder on ourselves in a way that moves us forward. You know, we're seeing a lot of be soft and be gentle.
Totally.
That we're not forged by that.
No.
The human spirit is not forged by softness.
No, it's forged by adversity and difficulty
Yeah.
and challenge and overcoming.
And it's not forged by, oh, I'm just going to be nice to you. That is a complete disservice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that would be the other piece.
That's incredible coaching for coaches and I guess
Yeah.
in your lane physicians.
Yeah.
Dr. Gabrielle, this has been incredible. We still have some more time, but I
Great.
want to transition to the lightning round, if you will, so that way you can impart some last minute knowledge
Yep.
bombs on our audience, if you're up for it.
Okay.
All right, so specifically in coaching and I guess in the
Yep.
physician world, I always love this question because usually, it's a passion-based business. So from your perspective, what are you really passionate about these days and why?
Well, obviously, this concept of muscle-centric medicine, I am on a mission to change the conversation from obesity to muscle-centric.
Love it.
Yeah.
For you, this is interesting because I think there's probably a lot of zones of genius you have in our short time of getting to know each other, but you're a brilliant, brilliant mind. What would you say is your zone of genius or your area of full expertise?
Yeah, I think that my zone of genius is taking the science and really caring about the person and being able to kind of blend the two.
And you are a giver. You can
For
just
sure.
you can just
For
feel
sure.
that energy.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Next question. What is a unique value bomb that most fitness health coaches should know, but maybe don't? And maybe we've covered some of that ground, but maybe it's a good opportunity maybe to reiterate or just something else that you can.
I think being deeply committed and laser focused and going deep on your passion and becoming exceptional at it there's no quick fix and there's no shortcuts to excellence.
Sage advice. Next up, I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable for all for all the success.
Can I phone a friend?
For all the success that you've had, all the amazing podcasts that you're on,
Yeah.
I've seen with $250,000 and hundreds of thousands of views. Certainly, you're human as well, and you've had obstacles. What would you say has been one of the lowest moments of your life, and how'd you overcome that?
When I finished my fellowship, I was in a practice on Fifth Avenue.
New York?
In New York. And the rent alone was $40,000 a month, just in rent. That's not all the other aspects of it. And it was just a really bad business decision. We just didn't have the things in place. And that was probably really the toughest time, And that location is no longer there, and it was quite a learning lesson.
It was tough.
Yeah.
Copy that. Well, thank you for sharing. On the flip side,
Yeah.
what would you say in your perspective is probably your proudest moment or your biggest accomplishment in life?
Well, I don't think that I've had that yet. And I think that if you ask me that, I will always say that.
Love that, by the way. I love that mindset.
But I will say I'm really, really proud of my family. And I'm really proud of my husband. That's not obviously something that I did, but he is just a very humble, incredible guy. And we have 2 beautiful children.
Yeah, Shane's awesome.
Yeah.
So, good on you.
Yeah.
Next up,
I got another one.
You got a few
Okay.
more.
All right.
You're in the business of giving incredible coaching advice, which we've done to our audience in spades already.
Yeah.
What would you say is probably one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever received, and why?
I would say it's really a deep level of commitment. Be really committed to what you believe in, and you stand for something.
And I'm going to dovetail that because we were talking off camera, and one of the things that, and it guys kind of goes into the commitment, but you've been featured on Muscle and Fitness and Men's Health and Women's Health and all these major publications. And I actually asked you off camera, which I was planning on doing it in this interview, is like, how did you were able to market yourself to that level?
I have done no marketing.
It's your level of commitment to your craft.
It has been my level of commitment.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, I didn't go and outreach to these people or do any of that. I think that, you asked me a zone of genius. I think, and I don't even know if this is a zone of genius, but actually really caring about the well-being of what I'm seeing means a lot.
Oh, I think it is.
And I think that perhaps that may be one reason. And then really going and getting the education that's required to do that, doing the heavy lifting. It's a lot of sacrifice.
Oh, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Good on you. All right, a couple more. Habits are foundational for success. What's a habit you've picked up over the years that's been really critical in the success you've achieved?
I'm very disciplined.
In what way?
I am up early and I'm working. So if I'm up at 4:30 or 5, I'm very disciplined to get up and to work. And whether I want to or not, I do that.
Next up, leaders are readers. So certainly you've
I have a book club.
You have a book club?
I have a book club.
And so elaborate.
I have a book club with my girlfriend, Emily Frisella, and
Okay.
we have a book club called Freedom Reads. And we read a new book every, like it might be every month or every 6 weeks, depending on how long the book is. I am a very avid reader, and I have always been, so much so that we have a book club.
Well, you had to get through years of school the way you did.
And I still read. I would say that's something that I love to do. And the book that we're reading right now is called Deep Focus by Cal Newport.
Oh, yeah. I haven't read it, but I've...
Maybe it's deep work.
Deep
Ooh,
work.
I should know. It's
Deep
deep work,
It's
not
deep
deep
work.
focus. Yeah,
deep work. From this perspective, this has been absolutely incredible. I still have one more question for you to basically impart our knowledge, or your knowledge, on our audience. And as you know, our audience are interested in fitness, and business, and entrepreneurship, and really just living a better quality of life, personal growth perspective. What would be your last piece of parting wisdom that would really help our audience on their journey?
Yeah, know yourself above all else.
Love that.
Yeah.
Dr. Gabrielle, I want to thank you so much. Before we shoot for today, where can our audience connect and find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and my website is the same name, and Twitter and Facebook, and I have a great newsletter and a great YouTube channel, and I'm launching a show.
And what's that show going to be called?
This is from Bedros.
Okay.
It's going to be the Dr. Gabrielle Lyon Show.
Nice. And by the way, you spell Lyon, Lyon.
Lyon, yeah.
Very
Some
good.
people may spell 4 or 5 letter words, but we'll stick with Lyon. Yeah.
Dr. Gabrielle, you are amazing. Before we wrap today, I just want to thank you for being on.
Of course.
I've been so excited about this. We've been planning it for a few months now, and
Yeah.
you made the trip, and certainly had other business affairs. But I just want to thank you for who you are. I want to thank you for the way you show up. I want to thank you for your incredible knowledge and focus at your craft. It's inspiring to me.
Thanks.
It's absolutely inspiring to me. But most of all, I want to thank you for your heart. You can truly
Thanks,
care.
Bryce.
You care about your craft. You care about people. And to me and to our audience, that means a lot. So
Thank you.
so thank you for being on the show, and really appreciate your time. And audience, I know you had a great experience today. You got a ton of value, and I did, and I know you certainly did as well. So if you'd be so kind to give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, and write us an awesome review on iTunes, that way we can keep producing this content for you for free. So Dr. Gabrielle, thank you again.
Thanks.
And friends, we'll see you in the next episode.